Hi, Katie. Welcome to the High Vibration Living Podcast. So, this is such a treat for me to have you on. We have had so many discussions about food and health and well-being over so many years, and I've always been looking for ways for us to work together more. So I really wanted to get you on the podcast because I really admire your nutrition advice. We come from a very similar space, so I feel like my work as a chef really complements your work as a nutritionist. And I feel like there's just a lot of noise when it comes to food right now and how to build a plate and how to eat to be healthy and feel good in our bodies. And so I thought I'd bring on an expert so we can kind of, quell some of that noise and help people who are just looking for some basic information again to get themselves going.
And you're right. There's so much noise around nutrition, and I think there always has been, and it's always changing, and it'll go from one end of the scale to the other, and it's so confusing for just the average person. So I love the opportunity to be able to just get back to foundational healthy nutrition that doesn't really involve a diet and restrictions and these temporary fixes. It really set us up for more obstacles in the long run.
Yeah, I think everyone just wants to know like how to eat and enjoy breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and how to snack and just how to move through their life with ease and grace and joy, and to be able to continue to connect with people in their lives without feeling like they always are having to restrict. I think we need to find a balance with food and pleasure and, just less prison.
You said that so beautifully, because that's exactly it. I need that soundbite so I can continue to repeat that, because that's exactly it. We don't want food to stand in the way of our daily pleasure in our relationships. And people will tell me, I know what I need to do. I just need to do it. But I need to tell my friends that I can't go to eat and I can't celebrate and I can't do this. And the holidays are coming. And it's really not about that, because that spells to me deprivation, restriction, and then it's all going to come right back when you've burned out on it or you've hit your end date. So I love everything you said about just kind of like living life, enjoying food, because it's one of the things that we have to do to survive, and we still get to consciously enjoy it. Like we have to breathe, we have to go to the bathroom, we have to drink water, but food, there's still an element of joy to it. And we should be able to continue to hang on to that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people think in order to get healthy, they need to spend more time by themselves, that they need to siphon themselves off to do their exercises, to build a healthy routine, to start to eat clean and light. And I think that's actually where our health deteriorates, is when we disconnect from people. I feel like a big part of being healthy is the connection with others. It's sharing a plate of food with others. I think we've all found that when we sit down at dinner time with other people, we end up eating less than when we sit down by ourselves in front of our TV and eat.
Oh, absolutely. That's a good point. So let me kind of start by sharing who I am, what I do. You know me. We've known each other since 7th grade, and come back together with this bond of our love of nutrition and health and well-being. So I am a registered dietitian, and in college I was studying, my major was communications with a minor in photography. And then I realized I wasn't that good at photography. And I started to get interested in nutrition, but not from a positive place, more because I was starting to connect it to my poor energy levels, my skin. I did the freshman 20, but I did it in like record time. I did it in like a month and a half. I like went for it. I was like mac and cheese and dessert. Like I didn't know adults ate this, and I was pumped, like dorm rooms.
I've known you for so long, so I can't even imagine you eating that way, because like I like know your eating habits from when you were like 12 years old. So that's so bizarre.
Well, but I also, like, let's go back to when we were 12 years old. You came over for a sleepover, and we went to the store and we got Clearly Canadian soda, which is like a super sugary, sparkly drink. And I remember we got like wild cherry and Score bars, which was a toffee. And I think we probably had like 3 each. And then I remember, see, my memory is pretty insane. We made jam, and that was the first time I learned how much sugar was in jam, because we took some strawberries and jam, and like it got all gelatinous, and we like listened to Mariah Carey and like sang and cried about whoever we had a crush on. So food is celebratory, and we have memories around food, right?
Yeah.
But I also went to my house, and that like my family My mom specifically always fed us a vegetable, at least one. We always had a salad on the table at dinner time. We ate dinner together. She had homemade meals, even if she like would make a lasagna, and it was like oftentimes a grilled protein, like a fish or a meat, a veggie, a whole grain, and then a salad on top of that. And dessert after dinner just wasn't really a thing. So when I went to college, I remember sitting at the table in the dining hall and watching people like go get dessert and maybe 2 desserts, and all of a sudden I was being served like corned beef half for breakfast, and I was like, wow, like I didn't know that these foods were like that people ate these foods, and I just dived in. I also had a traumatic event before I went to college, and my way of dealing with it was binge eating. So not only was food enjoyable, but it was also, I was using it in place of therapy. And there was a lot of, there was a whole thought process behind my body and food, in the positive and the negative. And I really wanted to control the way that people viewed me through my food. And I won't spend too much time on that because I that's not really where I go in my practice. When I graduated with my degree in nutrition, so it shifted because of all the things that I just explained that were starting to come to a head. I was like, I'm a binge eater. And then I would restrict, and I couldn't find this balance. And I would open Shape magazine to get my nutrition advice. And in the vending machines in the dorm, there were Slim Fast. I used to do Richard Simmons, Sweat into the Oldies in my room, and Beachbody workouts, RIP Richard Simmons. I was just confused. And I thought everyone around me is confused because everyone's giving different advice. And so I actually switched my major to applied nutrition. And interestingly enough, I remember telling my parents, I want to use photography and nutrition and wellness together, and I don't know how. And, fast forward to social media, never would have thought that the two would go hand in hand for some people. So I switched colleges. I went to, where did I go? Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Graduated, that I wanted to work with eating disorders or in a hospital. Went into corporate wellness. And also before that, I was teaching kids about nutrition. And I really was missing the one-on-one. I love interpersonal communications. I do enjoy educating people. I like it on a broad scale. Like I can sit and talk to 300 people and love it and be charged. But I also love sitting with people one-on-one because then I get to see their progress throughout. I had a mentor when I was doing my internship to become a dietitian. She was an integrative functional nutritionist. And I was like, what is that? I've never heard of this. And it was really getting to the root cause of symptoms. Here's an example. If someone comes to me and they say, I have acid reflux really bad, I take some medication for it. My question is, what is the root cause? What are the foods that you're eating? How are you sitting afterward? Let's look at your weight. Let's look at your body. Maybe we do some testing. And that opened up a whole new world for me. And the way that I looked at nutrition as very therapeutic, not very, like it just is therapeutic. Food is medicine. And so now I work at Premier Fitness Camp in Carlsbad. And then I also have my private practice, Empowered Nourishment. And I'm really just trying to be the voice that's cutting through all of that noise that you were talking about, that says, can we just stop dieting? Can we get back to foundational nutrition, focusing on high quality foods, portion control, and balance? And if we can get to a point where we understand nutrition, where we understand the basics of it, I feel like we can step away from dieting. If we can step away from dieting, we're going to step away from that body shame, the anxiety around eating out. And no one's a perfect eater. I am not a perfect eater. I don't want to be a perfect eater, but I've really worked hard and found balance in food. It's like, I really feel like those are some pillars to thriving with nutrition. That was a long introduction.
Well, it was fantastic because I think you've gone through a very similar journey of most women our age. And I think it's still going on with all the generations below us. Just thinking your body's supposed to look a certain way, not understanding why your body keeps changing, so does your activity level, so does your stress level at different times in your life, and not having the tools to ebb and flow with the seasons of your life. And so when your body's not reflecting how you feel on the inside, or vice versa, when there isn't a match, you beat yourself up, and then you isolate yourself. And then, we struggle with our friendships and our relationships, and, we miss out on life. And I think a lot of what you and I do in our work with food is to help people be able to lean into life and be able to enjoy every day, not be a prisoner of their body or their mind.
Yes, I'm just loving the way that you're phrasing all of this, not being a prisoner of your body and your mind, because we have been in that place where we're looking at a menu and thinking, what am I going to eat? We're counting calories, and we should adjust calories, because calories are the biggest pain point for so many people, and I hear it every day, and it drives me crazy because I've experienced it and because I've learned another way to look at food, and I totally lost track of what I was going to say.
How do we look at what we're going to eat for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or when we're at a restaurant, and not look at calories, look at nutrient density, or look at a balanced plate?
Okay. So anyone that knows me or worked with me, I never give short answers because there's so much about nutrition that I love and want to get across. But I'm going to make this as simple as possible. We want to look at the quality, the quantity, and the balance of that meal. I was working with a client, and he's like, Katie, I finally got it. And I had worked with him for a long time, and something clicked. And he said, I'm going to eat by the Katie plate. What is the Katie plate? And he held out his hands and he said, the food is going to fit on my plate, which is going to be about the size of my hands. The palm portion is going to be my lean protein. The finger portion are going to be my starchy carbohydrates, which we'll talk about. The thumbs will be approximately about my fats. And then the other whole hand will be my non-starchy vegetables. And that works because the bigger you are, the bigger your hands, the more you need. The smaller you are, the smaller your size and stature, the less you need.
Hands.
Well, and then there's some people that they're very big and tall and they have small hands, and so there's exceptions to the rule. Yeah. But if we can think about food generally in that term of balance, that's a really easy way to not look at calories, but to measure. Calories in versus calories out is what we all learned. Right? Calories in is what I'm consuming. Calories out is what I'm burning when I exercise or just daily activities. And people forget that we burn calories, we burn fuel. I like to say fuel just in daily activities. Calories in versus calories out are not an equal equation. So if I am counting my calories that I'm eating, and then I get on an exercise bike and I say, I'm going to burn 300 calories or 500 calories, and I'm putting my hands on the sensor and I'm working. And whether I'm going really fast or using my muscles with more resistance, it may give me the same printout or the same readout. There is no way that machine can adequately and efficiently measure how I've burned my fuel, because it depends on genetics. It depends on your digestive system. It depends on your muscle mass. It depends on if you have been in a starvation mode because you've been restricting food and you've slowed down your metabolism. And food that I'm putting in, when we're talking about 4 calories per gram for protein and for carbohydrates and 9 for fats, I'm actually using some of that fuel that's provided by that food just to break it down. And we're not accounting for that, right? So if I'm eating a carbohydrate that's more complex versus something more simple, and complex is going to be having fiber, unprocessed. Simple is going to be little to no fiber, more processed. So let's say some quinoa versus a piece of white bread, or Ezekiel bread versus white bread. I think maybe most people know Ezekiel bread. It's a really cardboardy bread. It's only good if it's toasted. But anyway, still it's better for you. So I have a complex and I have a simple carbohydrate. Which one's going to take more work to break down? The complex. Right? Which one is going to have a higher spike in blood sugar? The simple. So when I have that simple and that blood sugar goes up, insulin's going to go up, and insulin is a fat stimulating hormone. So I'm more likely to store that simple carbohydrate than I am the complex. So when we're looking at the quality of our food, we want to know that it is going to work for our metabolism, that it's going to work toward our goals, and also enjoying it. I could go down a very long avenue of blood sugar control, and maybe that's for another discussion. But when someone is just looking at calories and they say, oh, that's too many calories, I'm not going to choose that. I would rather them ask a deeper question and say, which macronutrient is tipping over? Which one is in excess? Is it the carbs? Is it the protein? Is it the fat? Is it all of them? And then you can make adjustments. Is it just the serving size? Right? So I really like to work in measurements in grams rather than calories, because there's the synergistic effect of my carbs, my proteins, and fat supporting my overall wellness and metabolism.
And I think it's really important that people start to understand nutrient density and how to build their plate on their own, because we're getting to a time where more and more restaurants in certain states are required to put their calorie content. And I think that's confusing the customer. It's confusing the regular man who's just trying to get a good, healthy meal. And now they're stuck looking at these numbers that they've been trained to think are what makes a superior meal, instead of looking what's actually in the meal.
Exactly.
And if that's going to work for their body, and is that going to even satiate them? I think a lot of people need to revisit, like, what do you actually enjoy eating? Because you're never going to be satisfied if you aren't choosing foods that you enjoy. How do you work with clients who they really know what they like to eat, but what they like to eat tends to be fast food or heavy processed foods? How do you work with them? Because I'm sure they've come to you.
They do, and they will consistently, because fast food, it's everywhere. It's like every corner, right? So one of the things with fast food is the sodium is just so high. And as you know, as a chef, we add sodium, we add salt in to enhance the natural flavors of food. Our taste buds have a tolerance. So if I'm constantly having salty food, and people will say, but I don't add salt to my food. At least 70% of the sodium, the salt that we're getting from our diet, is coming from processed foods, eating out, restaurants, and things in a bag, things in a can, pre-made. So it doesn't matter if you're not salting your food, your sodium still may be really high. So fast food, sodium is going to be high because it's just going to electrify that taste. So when you sit down to have a salad, you're like, this is like, I'm not a cow. I don't want to eat this. This is for the birds. This is for, I don't want this. It doesn't have any flavor. Where's the excitement in my food? So what I try and do is do a reset with them. Like, let's get back to resetting our taste buds. You will need to eat these foods for a while just so that your old taste buds shed, just like our hair and our skin shed, and the new ones come in, and those new ones can taste the natural flavors. Now, someone's going to say, no, I'm not going to do that, Katie. I like my food. It fits into my lifestyle. I hear a lot from busy moms, and now I understand it. I don't have time. I pick up my kids, I take them straight to soccer practice. And then at the same time, I have to take my other daughter to ballet. And then I pick up fast food on the way home. And then I get back to my computer and work. And there's no time for cooking. Okay. So I had a client come to me once and say, I have Diet Coke and McDonald's for breakfast. I have Carl's Jr. for lunch. I have whatever other fast food is out there for dinner, and don't like vegetables. This is not going to change. I'm not going to cook. But I need to lose weight and my blood pressure is high. And I thought, oh my gosh, how can I help him? And I took it as a challenge, and I was like, okay, game on. Let's find the foods that you like on those menus that are at least a little bit better. Yes, he lost weight. Was he healthier? I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe his blood pressure went down a little bit. I had him take a cooking class that was a low sodium cooking class, and I stayed in the class because I just really wanted to see how he'd respond to it. And I said, how did it taste? He's like, I couldn't taste any of it.
Yeah, because his whole palate's numb to the processed food.
Yeah, completely shifted into only that heightened sodium-laden food. And I thought, well, I did what he wanted. He lost weight, but that he was an exception. But I will say most people will take that, feel good, and then move on to the next step and the next step. If I throw everything at them at once and I say, I'm going to have you cook these meals and you're going to take these supplements and you're going to go exercise with this trainer, done, they're never going to come see me again. they're going to talk about me when they went to dinner, and they're going to be like, I met with this crazy woman that wanted me to do all these things. And it's just, I'm not realistic. So it's just meeting people where they are and then helping them progress one step at a time. And sometimes some click, like this guy, he's like, it's the Katie plate, and this is really easy for me to implement. And
that is really easy to implement. I really liked the hand movements and understanding the fat amounts by using your hands, because they'll go with you wherever you go. So you can really apply that anywhere you travel in life.
Exactly. And the other important piece of that is moderation. So if you love certain foods that don't fit into the whole foods arena, you can still have them.
Yes.
You just are practicing moderation with it. So plan that. It's an event, right? Just like you would plan a concert. Like it's an event. You're going to pick out your outfit. You're going to go. You're not going to pick out your outfit for your dessert. Maybe. I don't know. But I had a client where we would do that. We'd be like, okay, let's just plan it. Like get all this stuff out of the house, but tell me what are the things that you really love that you want to practice moderation on. She's like, I love this brownie that I get that's next door to where I take my kids for karate. And I was like, cool. After you drop off your kids at karate on Friday, we've had a clean week. On Friday, they're taken care of. You're going to go over, get your brownie, put it on a plate, sit down, mindfully enjoy it, savor it. And she did it. And when I saw her next, she's like, I realized it wasn't even good. She's like, it was just something that I felt like I deserved after a long week. And I would eat it so quickly and I'd have so much shame afterward. But I would say, but I deserved it, but I deserved it. And she's like, I want to pick something else. I'm like, all right, so next week, let's pick out something else and enjoy it, whether it's a glass of wine and you can distribute that throughout the day or just once a week. I use like 10% of your intake, 5 to 10% of your intake will be where your moderation category is. If you are choosing what foods fit in that moderation category, you have to choose foods that you're not going to binge on. So I call those trigger foods. Cookies are a trigger food for me. I don't care if it's good, if it's bad. I'm going to eat one and I'm going to eat the whole box. I'm going to keep thinking about it. I'm going to finish the box so that I'm telling myself, okay, they're gone. I don't have to worry about it tomorrow. Like we all have these little tricks, right? So they just don't come into my house. But if I want one, and that's part of my moderation, I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to get a really, really good cookie and I'm going to enjoy it. And then walk away with no shame. It's fine. It's moderation. As long as that my moderation isn't going from 5%, 10%, 20%, 30%, and then I'm off balance again.
If people are still struggling with binge eating or have those foods that they can't control themselves around, what do you suggest they do for help? Get a nutritionist, get a therapist, either one? How can someone address the issue? Because I don't think they can do it on their own.
Yeah, I agree. Food is an addiction. And it's like if someone needs to step away from alcohol, you stop going to bars. You hang out with different people, right? You join a walking group. You can shift away from it so it's not in your line of sight. With food, you still have to have it, right? So we can't just step away. And with certain behaviors that go along with food, I think a therapist that really focuses on food behaviors is extremely helpful because food cravings are an anticipation of the way the food makes you feel, right? We're not always picking food because we feel that's going to taste really good. We're picking it because it reminds us of something that our mom made us when we were younger, something that is celebratory, something that here's an example. Gummy bears, like the original gummy bears. I can't even think of the brand, but we would go to camp as a family every summer, and tradition was that we would get gummy bears. And I remember biting off the head and taking the body and putting the red with the orange, the yellow, and then tasting the different flavors. And so those are very nostalgic to me. And if I can separate the taste and the memory, then I may be more beneficial. But that is so much easier said than done, right?
Is it the dopamine hit then? Is it the joy, the brief level of joy that someone's getting from eating the food and before the crash?
Yeah, again, it's not my area of expertise, but I'm going to say simply yes. When we have a craving, it's always a carb. No one tells me, oh my gosh, I am craving chicken. I am craving a big, that's just not the problem, right?
I feel like in the South, though, they do crave chicken fingers.
But it's fried.
It
A
is.
simple
It is.
carbohydrate fried. So it's a processed food or a simple carbohydrate, right? It's
Yeah.
never a whole food. Like you and I, because we're at this different level in we're further along in our health journey, we'll be like, my body is craving salad, a
It.
vegetable, a green
Yep.
smoothie. Like we start to understand what our body is really going to need to feel good. But when we're operating off of emotions, we're going to say, I am craving a cookie. I'm craving ice cream. I'm craving fried chicken, right? Something more processed. And I believe that our primal brain is saying, I need quick fuel because I haven't slept well. I am stressed. I'm inactive. Something is going on that's putting you in that fight or flight, whether it's emotional or physical. And so your body's saying, okay, I have to fight a saber-toothed tiger or I have to run away. So give me some quick fuel. And that's going to be carbs. Another reason I believe is just the marketing food. There's a great book called, I think it's called Salt, Sugar, Fat by Michael Moss. And it talks about the industry, the billion-dollar industry, food manufacturing to make food taste so good that it hits that bliss point. And it's just changes in the ingredients of more sodium, more sugar, more fat, so that people want more. It's like Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop. That's designed that way, right?
Yeah. And there is MSG. There are actually chemicals in there that play with your palate, and your palate does change. We get new taste buds every 7 years. So there's always an opportunity for like an evolution in the foods that you crave and the foods that you like. And like you're talking about, when you do a detox, when you make edits in your diet, when you choose to pull some things out, over time, foods can taste different and taste better. But there's that when you involve chemicals with food, it disrupts the brain, and then it disrupts the gut.
Well, in monosodium glutamate, MSG. So glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter. So that's where we believed that people were getting headaches from it, or they could have a food sensitivity to it. But if it's an excitatory neurotransmitter, wow, that's going to taste really good because our perception of food is in our brain.
I really suggest people read the definition and the history of MSG on Wikipedia. I mean, there's a lot of places that you can go to read about it, but the definition and the history of it on Wikipedia will make you look at the ingredients on any packaged food you ever pick up for the rest of your life.
We're done with this. I'm excited.
Yeah, if you aren't someone that reads labels, go to Wikipedia. You will start to read labels because, I mean, they're letting it out there. They're letting people know why it was designed, how it was designed, what it was actually originally used for. And you'll try to avoid it like the plague. And you have to remember that it's labeled in many different ways. It has over 20 different names these days. So you're not going to see MSG on the label. So just be mindful of that. A lot of foods have different names. You're also going to see natural flavors. Not every company has to list all the ingredients. And that's what's fascinating for me owning my own organic spice line is I list all the ingredients in the spice blend. Whereas you pick up most spice blends and they don't have to list all the ingredients.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And labels are very basic, but it's still very confusing. Most people don't know how to read a label or what to look at in a label. And then some of these ingredients, the intention was good when it was created. It's still been something that's very processed that our body doesn't recognize. When it doesn't recognize it, it can't use it. It's not going to fuel our cells. It's going to cause damage. For example, trans fat. Trans fat was initially created as a healthy alternative to saturated fat. Well, now we know trans fat is super damaging on a cellular level. It causes more oxidation and causes damage to the arterial wall. We want to eliminate it. We want to avoid it like the plague. But it was also, let me back up a little bit. So it was supposed to be a healthy alternative to saturated fat, hence margarines. And then it was to help food manufacturers increase the shelf life of their food. Yes. So it makes sense because you're not throwing out a lot of food. It's going to last longer. So in theory, but when we look at the long-term effect of it, none of these processed foods have ended up to help us in our health. Not one. Yeah. Even high fructose corn syrup. Fructose, it's in fruit. It's fine. Now there's 13 different terms for it. We can't figure it out, right? And we have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease on the rise. We've got all sorts of issues from just overdosing on something that's good. So anything that too much of a good thing is still too much and can be damaging. It all goes back to moderation.
Yeah. And we have these conversations. Like, I always like to bring it back. It's just so we can wake up every day and feel good in our body and enjoy our life. And a lot of it has to do with mindset too. A lot of it has to do with our gut health. Like, everything's connected to the food and what we put in our body. So we share this because, you know, a lot of people are waking up just not feeling good or not happy or not comfortable in their skin or their clothes. And a lot of it can come back just to simplifying what they're eating and going back to some basics.
So you said something that I love, which is gut health. And I get real excited about digestion. I've pivoted in the past few years to really focusing on digestion. And we've heard all disease begins in the gut. Some of the gaps in traditional testing for digestive health can be extremely beneficial in learning more about, if that makes sense. Let me kind of, again, use an example. I had a client that was having very chronic diarrhea. I talk about poop a lot, so we'll just chronic diarrhea to the point where it was affecting his social life. He's like, if I go to someone's house and I realize I have to go to the bathroom, I've got 1 minute to make it to the bathroom. And if someone's already in that bathroom, I'm in trouble. And he's like, I'm not going to share the embarrassing stories so that like we can picture what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
And so it was getting progressively worse over about 20 years. Affecting his social life. He had been going to Cleveland Clinic. He had been to GI specialists and they couldn't find anything. They tested him for celiac. And I can't remember all the tests they had done. And I was like, let's do food sensitivity testing. Food sensitivity testing is not an allergy. It is not an immediate response. Sensitivity means that it is causing inflammation in your body. And that can show up as GI distress, brain fog, anxiety, depression, skin breakouts like eczema. It can manifest itself as fibromyalgia, achy joints. It can make chronic diseases worse, especially like inflammatory. So I said, okay, let's test you for gluten, non-gluten grains, dairy. I can't remember what else we put in there. And when we got the results back, gluten lit up, like highly reactive, not allergic, highly reactive to gluten. So I was like, let's take it out. Gluten-free, strict as can be. And people don't realize gluten is in soy sauce, it's in licorice, it's in some powders. I mean, we are getting an abundance of gluten. He was so excited. He's like, Katie, I want to send you pictures of my fully formed poops. Please don't. But it changed his life. His wife came in, she's crying, and she's like, I feel like we have our life back. And a few times he's been like, I'm going to test it. Like, maybe it's just coincidence. He's like, nope, can't do it. And so it was gluten and it was dairy. So food sensitivities, I think, are so downplayed in Western medicine, but they can show up in such a variety of ways. Gluten is a really common food sensitivity. Dairy is a common food sensitivity. Non-gluten grains. So I've had people that are reactive to gluten and they take it out and they're not feeling any better. I'm like, well, let's test your grains, and oats will show up. So they'll take oats out and they're feeling better. And when I say better, like when I have gluten, my brain fog and my anxiety is just through the roof. And in college, I was always struggling a little bit with digestion, but mainly the brain fog, the anxiety, issues with my skin. And it wasn't until I started going through fertility treatment that my very Western medicine doctor said, you know, maybe it's due to your endometriosis. And I was like, well, what do I do about that? And he's like, I hate to say it, but even more than surgery, people going gluten-free has made the biggest difference. He's like, I don't understand why, but let me just put it out there. And I was like, you know, game on. I'm a dietitian. Let me go do some testing because I like data. And it just lit up. And so when I took out the gluten, I did notice my inflammation went away. I didn't know it was going to be associated with the brain fog and the I felt like a new person. I was like, had I known this 10, 15, 20 years ago, my life could have actually been a bit different, you know, and it's one thing, it's one component, but I loved bagels for breakfast and I loved soy sauce. And when I go to sushi, I was like, give me all the fried shrimp and the soy sauce. And my friends would always be like, what is wrong with you? After we have sushi, you get all weird. And I was like, I just don't feel well. I'm like achy. And yeah. but I thought I was allergic to tuna. I didn't know. But when you get in this space and you start exploring, it just opens up a whole new world. So food sensitivities can be extremely helpful in getting to the root cause of symptoms. Another test that I love is stool sample analysis, and it's looking at your microbiome, the diversity and the richness of your microbiome, looking to see.
Is that the Dutch system?
No, Dutch is hormones. I use a couple different tests. One's called Gut Zoomer and one is GI Effects, but it also helps me see how well you're breaking down your proteins, how well you're breaking down your fats, how well you're breaking down your fibers.
Cool.
It's super cool. Yeah. And then there's just so many branches you can go with integrative functional testing. Toxic load. Like, what's our toxic load? Are we high in heavy metals? Are we high in environmental toxins? Are we high in molds? Molds are everywhere. And how is that affecting our overall health? So,
do you find when clients have to go dairy free, do they also need to remove butter and ghee? Or are they still able to cook with that?
I feel like butter and ghee, it's more of the fat than it is the proteins, because when people are reactive to foods, it's the proteins. So it's the whey and the casein that they need to stay away from. I'm dairy free, but I can still have butter. And I just found a butter that has olive oil in it, which I love. It still has cream, but it also has olive oil. And that also makes it spreadable, which is nice.
Yeah, is it the Kerrygold one?
I don't know
brand.
what it is, but I have checked the ingredients on it, but I don't know which one it is.
When someone has done the food sensitivity testing and they've eliminated those foods, but they're still finding something that's off, whether it's occasional inflammation, something in their gut, low energy levels, whatever it is, what should they turn to next?
So I always ask people to work with their physician as well as me or before me, because we need to check off, is it your thyroid, or are you anemic? Are there other things that can be going on? If I'm saying it's just everything's going to fit into functional wellness, I'm doing a disservice to the person, and it's that would be unsafe and unethical. So I find that I will act as a bridge to get people to the right practitioner. So someone just came to me recently and they're like, I want to do food sensitivity testing. Great. What are your symptoms? And they're like, I have choking. I'm jerky when I sleep. And there's all these symptoms. And I was like, you need to go to your doctor, your cardiologist. And he's like, I've been to a cardiologist. And when I looked at all the symptoms, I'm like, you need to go to a neurologist. Like, wow. Everything here is looking like it has to do with muscle. It's all muscle contraction, and it's manifesting itself in a lot of different ways in your digestive system, in your esophagus. It was going on with his sleep, and no one had told him yet to go to a neurologist. So I think sometimes you need someone outside of that space that's going to take a whole look at the person, because sometimes you go to a cardiologist and they're like, everything looks good, everything checks, no problem here. And sometimes they miss the next step of saying, I think you need to go see X, or they didn't get all of that intake. And I wish I knew more. I think if I were to go back to school, I would go down more of a holistic medicine route, because I really do enjoy being able to educate people on, here's the questions that you can ask your doctor and be more informed. So I do order cardiometabolic testing for people, and I can't make any prescriptions. If they have high cholesterol, we want to see, do they have oxidized? Do they have small dents? Do they have inflammation? Do they have the Lp(a), which is going to be an independent risk factor? And then I can say, when you go back to your doctor, I want you to ask X, Y, Z. And these are the tests that I want you to ask for. So they feel a little bit more informed, rather than getting news, walking away and be like, well, what do I do about it? What's next? Like, well, Mediterranean diet, here are the supplements here. So I get the privilege to spend more time with them and ask more questions. And therefore I feel like I get to see more progress and results.
I think a lot of us need like a medical concierge.
Yes.
So we need that person that is a mom / your traditional physician that you would have always, your family physician / nutritionist / just, who do I turn to when I have this symptom, and what is it and where do I go? It's like we need that person to morph into one. We need to pay them, because that's a heavy responsibility to bear. But I think all of us adults need that person.
Everyone's just kind of floating around. They're getting lab results and they've got these numbers. They don't know what it means. They don't know who to ask. And then it goes by the wayside. And then they go back the next year and they're like, your hemoglobin A1C is still high. And they're like, the what? What do I do about that? But wouldn't it be great if every doctor had at least a nutritionist or someone to explain what all of the labs meant? And now I'm getting an idea why I'm doing this. Like, I would love to do a course where it's like, here's your labs and this is what they mean. And here are the next steps. There's probably some liability on that because I'm not a physician, a medical physician, but we need somewhere to go to get this information other than just Googling it.
Yeah. And that's probably something that can happen in every state but the state of California with liability laws. But I think I have a positive outcome with the state of food in the US right now and the state of medicine in the US and kind of the state of everything. I really do believe we were almost at the tipping point. I think it's still going to get a little bit worse with people's health and just not understanding how the system is not working for them right now, that they really have to be their own advocate. Like you have to be the person that puts the food on your plate. Like you have to learn to cook a healthy meal at home. Like you have to take your health into your hands. But we're living at a time right now where I don't think the system, when we do lean on it, can support us. But I think this is the tipping point, and I think it can only get better from here. And I think we get to build a more supportive system that allows everyone to communicate better together.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm loving this movement, health at every size, body positivity. You and I grew up when we were getting a new Victoria's Secret catalog in the mail every other week. And we were like, how are we supposed to look like this? Like, it was tough. And now it's not everybody is beautiful, which everybody is beautiful. It's one step more. It's health at every size. Like, let's look beyond the waistline and let's talk about your longevity, your blood sugar, your blood pressure, your mental health, your sleep. And sleep is really hitting kind of the hot topics right now, thankfully, because sleep is such a huge piece of our wellness, and digestive health is right behind it, because you cannot get healthier without having a healthy digestive system. We can't absorb our nutrients without it. Our immune system struggles without it. 70% of our immune system is in our gut.
Do you think there is a certain time period where we should finish our meals before we go to sleep?
Yes, 2 to 3 hours,
Yeah.
Ideally 4. Now I do, I work with a geneticist and we do genetic testing. And one of the things the feedback that we give everyone is how many hours they should be fasting. And I'm talking overnight fast. I'm not in love with people doing like 2-3 day fasts if they're doing it to lose weight, because that's just restrictive eating under a title that feels more liberating or healthy. It's restrictive eating. Or when they say I only eat a 5-hour window during the day, well, what are you eating during that time? Does it matter? Yes, absolutely. That's a lot of food for you to process. So yes, most people will benefit from a 12-hour fast, and you want to back up from when you go to bed rather than when you go to sleep. So for example, if I'm going to bed at 10, I probably want to stop eating at 6 or 7, and then I'm going to eat breakfast the next day or 6 or 7. So you want to work backward. What I don't like to see is when someone's like, I come home, I'm hungry because I've been stressed all day, and then I eat until about 9, and then I go to bed at 10, and then I wait to eat the next day until 9 or 10, but I get up at 5 or 6. The whole point is that you can digest your food and then allow your fast to be like the resting state, because it's very metabolically expensive to be processing all of that food while you're laying down.
It doesn't feel good
in your body. Yeah. But for some people, it can feel good. When I was a binge eater, I was like, let me just eat this loaf of bread and go lay down into a food coma. So my blood sugar was crashing, right? But I was also not using any of that fuel, so it was storing it. And then my body missed an opportunity to restore itself. It's not good quality sleep.
Well, for those that are listening and they really want to know what a nutritionist actually is eating, can you tell me a little bit about like what you like having for breakfast in the season or for dinner in the season?
Okay, I love that you said in this season, because before I had kids and I was working like 30 hours a week, I was just kind of like I was concerned. I would wake up, I would do my stretches, I would make, I love to have rice, like savory rice with eggs and leftover veggies from the night before and avocado, and I put a little like yummy hot sauce on it, and I just felt so good. Well, now with twin toddlers that are 4 years old, getting up in the morning kind of feels like being shot out of a cannon. because they might just wake up and be like, okay, we got to get ready for school. You're having a meltdown. You got to brush your teeth. And it's like, I just don't have a ton of time for myself until after they get to school. So I'm going to tell you what I do. My little bit of coffee actually I've turned into my meal. So I do have my water, and I try, and sometimes I'll do electrolytes in the morning while my coffee is brewing. I'm a very slow metabolizer of caffeine, so I can't have too much. So I have a little bit of coffee, and then I do an unsweetened almond milk, a clean almond milk, because as you know, a lot of them have like gums and emulsifiers. So I use Elmhurst, which I really like. I actually use cashew milk. I put collagen powder, collagen peptides in it. So that's my fat and my protein. And then I'm drinking that. I've got fat, I've got protein, I've got carbs in it. That's a little, I treat that like a snack. And then after I drop off the kids, I may have chia seed pudding. I may have eggs and veggies. I usually am eating a little bit later on the weekends, like a quick, if I can get a good sourdough toast and throw some avocado on it. And I'll go to Trader Joe's and get like the pre-made guacamole because sometimes the avocados just aren't ripe yet. So it is not perfection, but it is better than a Pop-Tart. It's better than a bowl of cereal. It's better than a bar. And then I really try and focus on my lunch being very balanced. So I had a big salad, and I had some tuna on it. I had some pasta in it. Trying to think what else I ate today. Working from home today is a little bit different. I just want to graze, so it's a good thing I don't have cookies or chips in the house. But I have lots of cucumbers and bitchin sauce and things like that. So it's really kind of setting myself up for making sure I have a carb, a protein, a fat, and some veggies. And I may not make it all the time, but the majority of the time I'm getting a balanced plate.
Yeah, and my fridge is made up in the same way. I always have a few different types of proteins, maybe some hard-boiled eggs, some pre-cooked healthy starch, whether it's a short grain brown rice or like a Japanese yam. You know, I always have my fermented veggies in there, a variety of veggies, anything that I can pull out raw or I can blanch or roast or cook really easily. You know, I try to set myself up for success.
And the difference between you and me is that I do not like to cook. I don't like it at all. If I have to cook something, I'm over it already because I'm tasting it. And then I'm full by the time it's done. I'm not good at it. I don't like it. So I call it meal assembly. Like I will take a pan and I'll put chicken thighs. I'm so over breast. Chicken thighs, onions, broccoli, bell peppers, cauliflower, bake all of that together. And then I'll cook a sweet potato on the side of the rack. And I can turn that into an open-faced chicken sandwich. I can make it into a bowl. I can put hot sauce on it. I can put it in a tortilla because it's the same ingredients and I'm just adding different flavors, and I don't have to cook again for another few days. And I am lucky. My husband loves to cook, and now that he's been with me for almost 15, 13, 12, I don't remember, more than 10 years, like we're on the same page of when we go shopping. It's like, what proteins did you get? What veggies did you get? What starches did you get? And his portion size doesn't have to be the same as mine. He wants a big bowl of pasta, great. I do my half cup and then I put my clean protein and a ton of veggies in it. And when you start thinking in that way, it's so much easier. It's just like pieces of the puzzle. Even when you're going out to eat, okay, what protein do I want? What carb do I want? What veggie do I want? And I'll even eat off the sides. I'm like, ooh, a little this, and they don't mind as long as I'm tipping.
Exactly. Well, I actually didn't even get to all the questions that I had laid out for you. So hopefully that means that we can do this again
I would love
sometime
to.
this fall.
I'd love to.
Until then, where can people connect with you, learn from you?
So my website is empowerednourishment.com. My Instagram, which I'm not very active on, but it's there, is Empowered Nourishment. And I can be reached via email if anyone wants to reach out to me, which is info@nutritionbykatie, and it's KATIE.com. And yeah, I would love to do another one of your podcasts. This has been a great discussion. I feel like it's something we would have had at a coffee shop anyway.
Absolutely. And I'll have all of your links in the show notes for anyone that's interested. And can you leave the listener with just one last healthy tip they can consider adding into their life?
Oh, plate your food. Don't graze. Plate your food so that you can see what your serving sizes are and what you're having. When you graze, you're not feeling satiated, you don't have a meal, and you're most likely out of balance. If you can plate your food, you can quickly put your hands over it and look at those serving sizes: protein, starchy carb, veggies, healthy fats. I think that can be a game changer.
And have fun with plating your food, because that's where the joy component can step in. If you're not someone that loves to cook, you can have fun with plating it and making it pretty, because we eat with our eyes as well, not just with our mouth and our taste buds and the smells. Like, our eyes are involved too. So have fun with plating it. Have plates that you like, and put it together in a way that, lights you up and makes the meal feel special.
I love that. You're right. Sit down, enjoy it mindfully. Honor the process, because again, we have to eat. We might as well enjoy it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Katie. I had such a blast.
I did too. Thank you. I'd love to do it again.